Beatles album or Beatles box set that was produced in. Oh, it was just an album produced in Germany, and there were only about 80 of them produced. And I think he bought it for $8 and sold it for $8,000. Several $1,000.
Well, 50 on each, not particularly.
Yeah. He signed them all to his friend. He loves his job. He goes out scouring around countryside, on estate sales, things like that. Try to find some of these things. You notice there's a lot of record players out there this year?
Are there?
Yeah. A lot of them. Yeah, Mike and Bob Hatswell picked me up with a nice set 2 years ago from the Goodwill store, Salvation Army. That was
We
nice.
got stuff.
They got stuff.
Turntables.
Had the old speakers, big speakers, and the whole.
Well, 3 or 4 years ago, you could find one anywhere.
Yeah. Go ahead and pass that to Carla. So I'll make Charles. Welcome to the City Commission study session. Please turn off all cell phones tonight. First item on the agenda, review updates to the Stubby Park monument sign.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners. The issue is to review design concepts for the monument sign and message center to be located at Stubby Park. At the October 17th study session, we brought before the Commission 3 design concepts that evening, and after much discussion, there was some direction given by the Commission that night to go back to the drawing board with a little bit of some thought and different direction. Some of those to be, number one, the message center itself, which is 32 square foot, the actual LED message center to be located towards the bottom of the sign, as well as incorporating in a natural stone look that's similar to other signs that we have here in Leavenworth. And then the third was to have some sort of backing behind the city seal. There were a couple of renderings that showed the steel tubing, and the general consensus was to have some sort of backing behind the city seal, which would be located towards the top of the sign. So with that, we went back to Odegaard Sign Company, the company that we have hired to design and build this sign for us, and we come back with three renderings this evening. I'll go through them here just real briefly with you. On each one, the message center is the same size, 4 foot high, 8 foot wide. So 32 square foot. These are two-sided, so you'll be able to see from each direction. Some of the features of option A obviously shows a pillar type of stonework going up on the right side of the sign, which would be the non-street side of the sign. The street side of the sign would not have that type of stonework going up that side. One thing to keep in mind with this one, as you look at the still picture of it, with the way the city logo is set, it almost looks unbalanced. But
That's
keep
what I thought, yeah.
keep in mind that the message center is constantly moving, and messages are moving, and the wording is moving. So as far as the whole sign itself, it is centered throughout the whole sign. I think the look you get in real life would be more realistic than looking at this, because it makes it look a little unbalanced. Just a note that I've heard from other people with the sign similar to that. The second one, option B, has the stonework going up both sides, kind of creating a pillar type of look on both sides, with the city seal centered atop the message center, with a gap between both sides, between those pillars and the sign and the backing to that sign. And then the only difference between that one and option B is those gaps are filled in where the sign backing goes all the way out to those pillars, which, you know, just it creates a different look and possibly a little bit increased stability also, as you can attach there.
There is no study park on here, right? There's not going to be.
That is correct.
This is more of a
City of Leavenworth informational, correct. We are in the process of having a study park sign made just individually for that park, correct.
Okay. Personally, I like the third option. I feel like it is more balanced.
I agree.
I don't know, it just looks like the gaps in here, and as far as, yeah, there's no gaps in between the Leavenworth sign and the two pillars like there are in the center.
Yeah.
To me, it looks cleaner and more straightforward.
Yeah. You know, the only thing the ones with the gaps, it kind of reminded me about the pillars that were outside of Fort Leavenworth, but I do like C better. I think it's just my preference.
You thought, Mr. Designer?
They have
I know you always say
rough
the same
estimates
thing.
on it yet, Steve.
No, it's all going to be depending on what design we come up with. Once we have a design direction, then then I will go back to them, and we'll come back. It will come back before the city commission, before you all, for final approval with exact costs, with everything involved.
And just to touch on cost briefly, we were asked by the commission to look at the potential use of transient guest tax.
Yes.
We feel comfortable probably in the half range. We have a number of large projects already sort of in the works for that. Wayfinding sign project that we've been working on with Main Street that the commission's talked about. I've actually met with Main Street. We plan on bringing that to a study session pretty soon. There's going to be up to 13 wayfinding signs around the area, contingent on commission approval. The wayside markers are a 2018 transient guest tax, the 22, whatever it may be, of those signs, the talking signs. We plan on completely redoing all of those. The holiday decorations, a potential portion for the website, and then, of course, the overall uncertainty of the change in the transient guest tax with the new hotel on board. So we thought we were comfortable with probably half, $25,000 range of the transient guest tax going to the construction of the sign.
Right.
Okay.
I could go with that. If you got my ask for a vote, I would pick number 3. Or anybody else is.
That's
Nancy.
my
The
choice.
third
Lisa-
one, yeah,
Lisa said
C,
third
yeah.
one.
Complete agreement with whatever they say.
Just nod your head and say yes, get the consensus.
I can't design anything. But I trust the other commissioners, and I think that's a great choice.
Okay.
Okay, simple enough. I'll take that back to the design company, and we'll get some concrete figures and bring it back at a regular meeting for final approval before we go any further.
Did you know if there was any big discrepancy in the amounts for these the different sizes here, or, but they're all about basically the concrete and all the other stuff is the main cost, isn't it?
The main cost, actually, where you get discrepancy, if you start changing the size of that message center.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, the message center
The
itself.
message center itself,
Oh, okay.
it's 4x8. That's where a lot of your cost is, because that's
Okay.
100% LED, two-sided.
Okay,
There's some cost difference, absolutely, but it's pretty minimal compared to if they're
Okay.
all the
all
same
of these
message.
are about the same price then. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, in the same ballpark.
Can the LED screen, I don't think it can be bulletproof, but can it have a heck of a protective screen on it, so if somebody throws a rock that, you know what I'm saying?
Vandal resistant.
Yeah.
As vandal resistant as possible. As you all know, nothing's vandal proof, but they do come with vandal resistant covering. And the other good thing about this is it's at a very, very high visibility area, high traffic area. I know PD goes by there regularly, just as part of their regular patrols, and so I think we've got that going for us as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, review the capital improvement program 2018 to 2022.
Madam Mayor and Commission, tonight I'm going to present to you the 2018 to 22 capital improvement budget for the city of Leavenworth. I'll briefly go through the sources, an overview of the capital improvements, and then we'll get into the recommended 2018 to 2022 capital budget. This will come back to you. This is just the introduction tonight. We're going to talk about what staff has recommended funding, and then we've also included what staff did not recommend funding in this. And the commission will have the opportunity to discuss the projects that are funded and that are not funded, and give staff direction before we bring it back. So I'll go through this and then we'll open it up for some questions. Briefly, turn this into a slideshow here. The first source of funding for the capital budget is a portion of the city's local sales tax. It is projected in 2018 that amount will be $2.2 million or thereabouts. And the purpose of this slide, the total capital budget for the next year, I should say 2018, is about a little over $6 million with all three sources included. The CIP local sales tax funds community center operations. That is an annual operating subsidy that has been in place for a number of years. Equipment replacement is vehicles. Those are everything from police patrol vehicles to parks and rec trucks, public works trucks, code enforcement vehicles. This is everything that's not snow plows and refuse trucks. These are just vehicles for our employees to do their daily business. Animal control facility is debt for that building that's retired in 2025. The library atrium is a project that's been in the works for a number of years, and they are having substantial leaks in their atrium. That's a project that we were waiting for the HVAC projects to get finished with before we scheduled, and it is time. Curb program is our annual allocation for curb replacement in the city. Fire trucks is the 3 new fire trucks we purchased, and that's the debt payment on those funds. The downtown hotel, we borrowed money to purchase the downtown hotel property. We are paying debt on that. I'll get into it a little bit here in a moment, but we hope to start paying that with TIF revenue probably in 2019, but we are not generating any TIF revenue as of right now, so that comes out of the CIP local sales tax. There's, we'll get into a little bit more detail, but other miscellaneous and contingency, and the point of the slide is to show you that once you get through with those commitments, we have about $330,000 left for new projects, so it's not a lot. Countywide sales tax, as the commission knows, the top 4 items are set by ordinance at 15% of that fund, so there's 60% off the top for debt reduction, sidewalks, economic development, and stormwater projects. Business and Technology Park, the bond on that, the $4.8 million, the debt service comes out of that fund. Second Street Bridge has 2 more years to pay off the debt. And one that's new that we'll talk about in a minute is replacement of the Riverfront Community Center roof. one of the hopefully remaining large roof projects we have in the city. Computer system upgrade, that was the going to cloud-based technology as we did last year. That has 2 more years of payment on that. And then Cody Park Playground, which was, I think, originally scheduled for 2015, and maybe it's been pushed back 2 different years for different projects we've had, whether they're related to body cameras or some other things that have been pushed back. So if you look at the countywide sales tax with some other obligations not included there that we'll go through in a minute, there's about $36,000 of new project money. General obligation bonds set by statute at 28%. We bond what we can pay for with the mill levy that's dedicated toward debt, and that comes out to about $1.35 million. As our mills become worth more, that amount will go up. Over the course of, again, that should say 2018 to 2022, over the course of the time of this 5-year project will generate, by estimate, about $31 million. And you'll see those same obligations over time. Animal control still has $1.28 million left. So you see that over the 5 years, there's roughly about $6 million worth of flexibility. So turning to your books, going through, I won't go through my entire letter, but I'll turn your attention to the very bottom of page 1 on the letter and continue. The proposed CIP includes several elements that either have substantial financial impact or represent a significant change from past practices. I'm going to go through those briefly. The continued shift of operational items out of the CIP. We mentioned that in operating budget time where we removed some relatively small $15,000, $20,000 operating subsidies that came out of the CIP. We are proposing in this that we stair-step the community center $300,000 annual subsidy over the course of 3 years down to 0, absorbing that into the operating budget. Of course, that would require that we have the revenue to do that, but the reason being is to increase flexibility in the CIP. We are, obligations aside, we don't have a lot of flexibility, and staff wanted to give the commission that flexibility to be able to look at other projects. We've also phased out the downtown debt service and replaced that fully by TIF revenue starting in 2020. Last 2019 would be the last payment out of this that would go to that. So those 2 actions are $370,000 we hope to remove from the CIP. Starting in about 2019 into 2020, and we have a couple other measures like that we hope to add flexibility. Riverfront Community Center Stone Replacement Project. The city has completed phases 1 through 3, spent about $1.2 million. Phase 4 alone is the final phase, but it's $1.4 million roughly. This is a lot of stone replacement. It's not as intricate work as the entryway it may be, but it's a lot of stone. So that's the proposed CIP amount does not include a grant that the city received for the Mid-America Regional Council. Staff did a good job securing a $500,000 grant from Mark, nor the $225,000 in state historic tax credit. So we were able to remove that $725,000 from the amount that we've budgeted in the CIP. I bring this up and give it a bullet point because if the commission should choose not to allocate this money, starting by 2019, the MARC grant will go away. It's a timed grant. So we have it budgeted at the amount of $340,000 over 2 years. The city will explore some temporary financing to get this started and then pay off the debt in 2020 with that second payment. The Riverfront Community Center roof replacement. The existing roof has been on the RFCC since the renovation, and it's way past its useful life. We've put back some projects such as carpet replacement until we get the roof replaced, until we can deal with those leaks. It's about a $140,000 project.
How old is that roof? What was the renovation?
When the building was refurbished in 1988.
88,
Yeah,
okay.
it's the flat roof that's over
Got
the
it.
Riverview room.
88, wow.
So
Okay.
absolutely past its useful life.
Okay, thank you.
Fire station HVAC project, it's a little discouraging that the building, I think, was opened in 2001 or 2, about 16 years out. But HVAC systems have this. We've been patching it for a number of years. There's been some mold issues because of condensation created with sort of a patchwork system. maybe some concerns of how it was originally designed and implemented. And we keep spending $10,000 a year in patching it, and so we need to replace that system now rather than continuing to nickel and dime that. General improvement bonds, we continued with the budgeted amount, hoping that as the mill rate increases or the value of the mill increases, that will allow us to bond more money for roads. A big issue with the GI bonds is 20th Street. I know we get a lot of questions about 20th Street. It has 2 more years, and then that will free up about $500,000 of GI money for roads. And it's an absolute necessity to continue with that 20th Street project so we don't face a total reconstruction down the road. Road improvement plans. Although there are no individual road projects included in the CIP, staff structured the plan with the intent of creating flexibility to have funding available for such projects should the commission desire starting as early as 2019. Some of the unfunded items that are included in this for your review are Muncie Road and Thornton Street. We hope to have the flexibility, should the commission desire, maybe starting in 2019 to address that or a different type project and not have to tap into that $1.35 million that we're using for the rest of the roads. So briefly, I'll turn you then to the next section, your next tab, your financial tab, which is page 1. These are your spreadsheets. Which go through each item by source. So the first one is your CIP local sales tax fund that we talked about. And these are all the items that staff is recommending approval for 2018, 2019, and beyond. We left the outer years, as we typically do, pretty open. We usually budget most of our projects in the first 2 years. Beyond those ones we've spoken about before, couple fire department items, a set of jaws of life for one of the new trucks, station carpeting, metal closed lockers, pretty simple stuff. Again, stuff we hope to eventually get all into operating budget. The PIO, budgeting for new commission chairs for around this table and up there. Those are actually, they don't look it, but more than 30 years old, which is astonishing. But when we have planning commission in here and board zoning appeals, we have to have different chairs and so be it. An audio upgrade is the companion to our video upgrade this year. It's essentially the soundboard and a lot of the components of our audio upgrade. The police department, Justice Center parking lot, that number is based on a formula, a cost share formula that we have. This will be, they're doing one lot this year and then probably one lot either in 19 or 20, so you'll have another 20,000 coming up at some point. Crime scene scanner is exactly what it sounds like. It sits on a tripod and it models car crashes or car wrecks and stuff like that. This is the one that we have is past its useful life and doesn't do a lot of the stuff that they do now. Parks and Recreation, some pretty standard stuff. We're replacing 2 tractors with 1. They were both models from the early to mid 1980s, and we're eliminating both of those with a new model. For next year, we have 3 fields that we'd like to bring to your attention. Steve, can you come up? Sure. That we have recommended for resurfacing, and we have a recommendation, but it's certainly up to the commission to determine which one you would like to do in 2018. And Steve, if you want to talk about the 3 fields.
Sure. These are just our neighborhood parks. As you all know, we've been upgrading fields over time. Last year, we were able to do South Side. There's basically 3 remaining, and when I say upgrade, I'm bringing in the ag line material, having them laser graded so that they're much more playable, they drain much better, and they don't get the weeds on them like you see. The 3 remaining are Doherty Park, Jefferson Park, and Eagles. Our goal is to have them so that these are, of course, there's 8 of them throughout the city. These are the ones that are open every day for general use by the public. The priority, at least from a staff standpoint and also from kind of the citizens, from what we've heard, is a lot of our fields don't have enough space for baseball practice just because of the size of them. Places like Hawthorne and these little neighborhood parks when you've got houses across the street. So to accommodate that request from a staff standpoint, anyhow, our priority would go ahead and do Eagles, where we can make that infield skin big enough to accommodate 90-foot bases.
Makes sense.
And then obviously our goal is to have all three of them done, between, here in the next couple of years, so that all of our neighborhood park fields.
I see a lot of action at Doherty Park on that ball field.
Right.
T-ball, softball, whatever it might be, whether the pickup games or, it look like they're organized games. Are you saying pass on that one right now, or no?
I'm saying pass on that one, and from a priority standpoint, just thinking of the needs of the citizens as far as from baseball.
Over both. Okay.
Yeah, just to add a place where people can practice, have 90-foot bases.
Okay.
That again is a small field. Obviously, they're hitting over and
Yeah,
over.
no, you couldn't play baseball there. I mean, kids above 12 couldn't play baseball there.
You're absolutely right, though. It gets a lot of use with the restroom facility there, so that would be right behind it.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, and you have something you do in basketball, resurfacing here.
Yeah, the next one at
That's
also
right
Doherty
there.
Park is to resurface that basketball surface. We looked at, Steve looked at a number of options. There's different ways you can do it, different products, and we felt the best use, I don't believe it was the cheapest nor the expensive, is about $90,000 worth of work. So we have that
Needs it.
scheduled for 2019.
Yeah.
And it's definitely in the works, but it's kind of it's a larger ticket item than you would think.
Okay.
The light pole northwest. Not run by Westar, obviously.
No, these are the ones in the park, Steve.
Oh, in the park, okay.
Correct. They're the real old ones that run along the walkway there
Oh,
on
no.
North Esplanade. Years ago, we started phasing in. It's very, very costly to try and replace them all. So what we've tried to do as the first year, I think I purchased 6 of them. And what we did is we modeled the same light fixtures on the new Delaware streetscape. And those old lights actually turn the corner right there at Delaware and Esplanade and headed up that way, so up to the north. So what we did is we removed the first 6 of those and moved them up into the park to replace ones that were broken or obsolete, so that we had a continuous turn of those. This would be continuing on with that, with a couple that have since been, they get knocked over. They're old. They're made of hot metal, and they get people knock them over and stuff, and then so that's what that is.
Okay.
For 11,007, how many, is that one? How many does that cover?
That is for two in the park along Esplanade, and then there's one as you go down into Doherty Park as well. So 3, and it also includes the installation of those, which includes you have to pour a whole new base and run wires through that because it's a different configuration.
If there are no other questions on parks.
Just to comment on Steve's, didn't they take one out for the driveway on this new hotel?
I'm not sure if they did or.
They did.
It's getting moved.
They just got a place.
Yeah, it got moved to the west of the driveway.
Okay.
Oh, so it's still long.
Still
Okay.
there. Okay. I don't have, anybody have any questions? Okay. Thank you, sir. Sure.
In Public Works, I'll just hit a couple of the highlights. Again, we've budgeted the Riverfront Community Center stone replacement in 2019 and 2020. Should the commission elect to move forward with that project. Service center canopy is over all the fuel tanks. Our police officers refuel there 24/7, 365. There's no cover, there's no lighting, so this is safety and comfort and security for those and for the public works staff that are down there. And it's designed over 2 years. The size that's required is going to require design and footings and a lot of other stuff, so that's why it's over 2 years. A lot of these are just replacement materials. The skid steer with milling attachment allows us to do a lot of our own asphalt work and a lot of our own projects. And the excavator, same thing. We had staff prioritize these. The salt spreader walkways is a safety issue. Inside the domes, it's essentially, Mike, if I'm wrong, please correct me, it forms sort of a catwalk.
Yeah, where
system.
the spreaders are hung in the racks, there's a problem when they have to be, when they get ready to be hooked up to the trucks, where the people have to, or workers can't get access to make sure everything's free and secure, so they're using ladders or something that creates a safety hazard. All the other communities have gone to fixed walkways as part of the support structure. And that's, this is really a safety issue for the workers.
Continuing on, City Hall parapet repair is not related to the roof and the work we've had done before. It's just another step of the upkeep of the top quarter of this building. Mike can provide more details on that project if you'd like them. But it is continuing on the work to upkeep the exterior of this building.
Okay.
Moving into IT, the wireless and switch upgrades for all buildings, the $120,000. We were looking at having to rewire City Hall. It has the original wiring from when the building was renovated, the Cat 5 cable that no longer functions well. We've decided to go wireless building wide. We won't have to worry about wires in the future. The building's small enough, our strength is, we have a couple departments on a trial system right now and it's working well. We think that wireless is the way to go. In the long term, replacing wireless switchers and boosters is much cheaper than replacing the hardware and the wiring and stuff that's associated with a wired building.
So it's not as simple as going out and buying $10, $100 router.
Modem,
and
yeah,
plugging it in
modem
there.
routers.
It's not that simple.
No, and we're doing it at all buildings, yeah.
Okay.
And then you see the library atrium and then the library parking lights. They have them all, but if you drive by the library at night, it's really awful, the amount of lighting that's in that parking lot, so it needs to be redone. And so those are the large items out of that amount of money. The next large item source is the countywide sales tax fund. Debt reduction again goes to paying off bond and interest. Economic development goes to our SOD grant program. That pays for LCDC and Main Street and all those items that typically come out of that fund. Sidewalk program, pretty self-explanatory. You continue to see recommended programs in the sidewalk committee that will be brought to the commission. Stormwater program, these numbers won't add up to 15%. There's carryover from year to year. The 16th Thornton, 45,000 is what's going to come out of 2018. We have quite a bit of money that wasn't used in 2017 that will make up the balance of that project. So we have Pawnee, Thornton, 3 Mile Creek stabilization bids have come in on that project. That's the big project down there. We opened those yesterday. Come to the commission next week for approval, and they came in good. So we'll move forward with that project. Business and Technology Park, debt doesn't get retired until 2037, so we'll be seeing that for quite a while. Second Street Bridge has 2 more years. Performing Arts HVAC has just the very last part of that. We're through all the big stuff, and that's the final amount there. Network system upgrades, as I mentioned in the bullet point at the beginning, is the rest of our wireless system, or our cloud-based system, RFCC roof, Fire One Station repairs, Cody Park, and then we've scheduled Stubby Park, which is the next one for 2019. And then finally, our GEO bonds, which these numbers will fluctuate and hopefully increase over the years, but that's the amount. The number that you see on the bottom here, 1.78, that represents the cap. But if we were to bond that much money, we would have to increase our millage rate to cover that debt. So I wanted to show you the next project to show you some projects that were not funded and have any conversation the commission would like to have. So there's a long spreadsheet or a long list of projects. It's under your next tab.
Your summary tab?
Yeah, so that starts listing the projects that are currently funded or have been funded, and on the second page of that, we hit the unfunded items. Muncie Street and Thornton Street obviously have not been replaced. Fire Station 3, we have some preliminary numbers on that. We understand that that's probably 5 to 10 years out potentially, but wanted to start a discussion on that. That's probably the next city building that would need to be replaced at some point. Cherokee Street overlay, and Mike can talk to you about that. Osage from 5th to 6th. These are all proposed with Public Works. Backup generator for the community center, nice to have, it's a large ticket item. Havens Park restroom, we've had those study sessions on that, certainly could be funded by the commission, but it's not included in here at this time. Leaf vacuums, that probably deserves some discussion to the commission at some time with a study session. We have been patching those together for a number of years. It's time to replace them. The cost now to replace the ones that we have with new systems, we've priced out at about $129,000. Parks equipment storage building, that would just be a building at the service center to help get some of their equipment out of the elements. We've done that the best we could, but there's just some more stuff that we'd like to get under cover at some point. Service center parking lot. It is a city parking lot, but we do have a lot of visitors to that parking lot, and it is in pretty terrible shape.
Yeah, it is.
We didn't fund a fire department pickup. That was just an internal decision. Gymnasium sound dampening, that's for the community center. The gymnasium's kind of become a popular large venue rental for some big projects over the years, and of course it's not made for sound to have that kind of stuff, so we've looked into some dampening measures. A tink claw is a public works brush,
It's a
tree limb.
leaf collection aid that our staff, I think, has merit for picking up long runs of leaves in a very cost-effective, efficient manner. They proposed that we look at it. It's where it is, and that's okay.
Tank claw.
Yeah.
Interesting to see what that looks like.
And then the Fuel Master upgrade is to our fuel system out at the service center, something we'd like to do, but weren't able to fit it in this year. That's the end of my formal presentation. The packets you have, which are online, provide you more detail on a lot of these projects and show you what's been. They have a little bit of a narrative to them, plus the year and the requested price and projected. So if there's any discussion the commission would like to have this evening, we can certainly have that. If not, over the next couple of weeks, you can contact my office and we can start a dialogue.
Okay, sounds good. Time to digest it a little bit.
Yeah.
I have two comments. One on the unfunded. I don't know, we can wait 2 years on Portland Street. That thing, especially from Broadway to 10th Avenue, going downhill, is in horrid shape. And it's been patched. You can tell me, or Mr. Cooper can tell me, I don't know how many times, I don't think it can be patched anymore. And waiting a couple of years to repair that, it's dangerous. Kids come down there going to school. If it's a frosty morning, a little bit of ice, and you hit those bumps, it's like moguls. If you're not paying attention, or if you're a young driver, not paying attention, you can slide out very easily. I think somehow we need to get Thornton on the schedule fairly quickly. I don't know when, I don't know how. I mean, that's what I rely on you, but I think that needs to jump up in importance.
If there was,
You suggesting just doing Broadway to 10th Avenue?
Well, I think that's the
then
one
go
that,
east.
maybe do that in phases, but that's, in my opinion, and you can tell me more, but I think that's the worst shape. If you're going west on Thornton, turn west on Broadway and look down that hill, it looks like a checkerboard with all the patches and things, and it's a tough road to ride.
Yeah, we need to look at them all, because there's a lot of them that are tough.
Yeah, but that one's got heavy traffic. I mean, that one's a heavily trafficked road. We list all the roads here. The Muncie's Road expansion, I think, is a good plan, but that's for future expansion. But I think Thornton on road projects that is unfunded, I think that, in my opinion, should be top priority. I don't know how to do it, and there's the price of it, $4 million, which is cheap. I don't know how much we could bond, but I think it needs attention fairly quickly. I'm interested in hearing what the other commissioners think on that.
Well, I'm not going to deny that it has the need there. Whether it needs to be this year, and maybe it could be phased in or planned in for the outer years. rather than just keeping it unfunded.
Because if we look at 2019, realistically, talking 18 months from now before it would start, in April, May of 2019. Mr. McDonald, you look at
The plans for Thornton Street were essentially completed, I think it was 2016. And it was a two-phase project, so the plans would have to be updated. Times and things have changed out there, but getting a set of plans that meets the commission goals can be done fairly expeditiously in 2017.
Mike, what are the two phases in the
I
plans?
was trying to think if they split it, Shrine Park Road, or if they split it.
Shrine Park to 2nd Avenue and then Shrine Park to 10th.
But if need be to split it somewhere else, we can certainly take a
Well,
look
Shrine
at
Park
that.
to 10th is the worst, correct?
Probably Shrine Park to 10th, probably Broadway to 10th as you go down that hill.
Yeah.
That's, in my opinion, it's worse, but I mean, you guys, you know the streets much better if you're doing what's underneath and which one's in more shape.
It's the one street that I get the most complaints
Yeah,
about.
yeah, me too. And it's a heavily trafficked street, and
Probably because the school.
kids going to school there, and, you know, obviously, a good service center right there. But I think it's something we should potentially discuss to see if there's something we can do if we have excess of money that we can use for bonding, or, you know, creatively, you and the finance manager can work that out. Those are my thoughts, but obviously it's a commission decision.
I mean, I'm willing to look at it, and I want to just take some time to look at all of these items too. But that is, it's a concern, definitely. Need some more information on it.
One other point I had, if you go back to the CIP local sales tax fund numbers right there, you look at the sales tax revenue for 2018, $2,209,000. That's 0.5% of retail sales tax. For people that say there's nothing going on in this town, there's no retail, that comes out to be $441 million going through cash registers in this city. It generates at $2.209 $2.2 million. That's $441 million, almost $442 million going through cash registers in this town, in the city. So I mean, there's a lot of retail that does happen here. And there's small retailers that contribute to it, big retailers, but that's an impressive number. When I tell people, I ask people quite often, how much money you think totally goes through the cash registers in Leavenworth every year. The most I've ever heard anyone say is that wasn't really in the retail business. They said 60 million. But a lot of people say 8 million, maybe 10 million. That's $442 million, and that's impressive in my opinion. Just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on this section? All right.
So what's our next step here?
If the one issue that if there's consensus tonight or not is the ball field, whether to go with staff's recommendation on Eagles or not, but you don't have to make that decision tonight. The next step would be any comments or questions from the commission, and then we'll have a follow-up meeting. There are no state statutes related to when this has to be passed. As you know, this is our issue, so we'll bring it back in another meeting and have any discussions at that time, and then we'll eventually pass it.
Are you looking for direction tonight on the ball fields?
I'm not pushing for direction, but if there is direction, that's one less thing we have to set up.
They're being, I don't know, the Eagles Park back there, since I live near there, and I can see it all the time, is being used a lot, so I don't know what the need is there, but apparently there's a need because there's people there a lot during the summer using that ball field for games, and if you include that. Of course, I also see them playing football out there right now and soccer, so they use that area a lot, so I think it would be good to bring it up to.
Now, this would just be a practice field. We're not
Practice
talking
Right.
Practice field.
grandstands or anything like that. There was a plan a couple years ago that was mini Royal Stadium. It's not that.
Big transition is
I'm
the ag line
exaggerating.
surface, I believe.
Just,
Yeah, the
It'd
circle.
be good, because it
Yeah,
floods
they
out,
deserve-
gets
yeah.
muddy
Yeah.
and stuff. and
Open to the public, pick up games whenever they want.
okay.
The kids are out there playing in the mud right now, and I think it
Right.
would be good, yeah.
It's good for them.
Cleaning the
Kids need to get dirty nowadays.
You
Look at us.
clearly don't do the
I
laundry.
played in the mud a lot.
Yes, I do.
Do you really?
Okay. Anything else on the CIP here before we move on? Okay, ready to move on then, I guess. Stormwater funding review.
Madam Mayor and Commission, the May 2nd, June 6th, July 13th, and September 5th, the City Commission studied stormwater program, the proposed stormwater program. In addition, we had 2 public meetings, one at the Community Center, one at Fire Station 1, September 28th and October 26th. The focus of those meetings, after discussing the need and consensus of the Commission that there was a need for some type of alternative funding for a stormwater program, was to determine the collection method should this program go into place. And that is what we are asking tonight from the Commission. We have narrowed down the collection, or the Commission had narrowed down the collection to 2 different options. One is an incorporation into the fee of the annual property tax, and 2 would be to add the fee to the monthly water bill. Mike Cooper and staff, Ruby, Aline from Finance, and have done a lot of work on these. So I'm going to let Mike briefly go through the 2. If you look at the surveys that we had, we did not get a good response.
It
was essentially even.
Insignificant.
Staff would lean toward the property tax, and we'll tell you a little bit about why, but I'll let Mike go through the 2 options, and then Commission would look for direction. And then before the end of the year, we would then bring back, based on that collection method, some numbers for you to look at how we would implement it, so that hopefully if we went that direction, we'd start at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, there's been, including this one, 7 meetings, absolutely no turnout. So you know when this really hits, have those dates handy. Have those dates handy. Yeah,
We'll
that is
hear. Why don't you
just,
tell us about it?
yeah,
Yeah, 10 surveys, that's really
yeah,
sad.
that's, yeah.
And there are 7 or more probably from the Boy Scout group.
The Boy Scouts, I think collectively may have filled 1 out.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Mike?
The 2 basic methods that were identified by the Commission were, for billing, was annual property tax statement, which is much simpler. It was anticipated that you could classify your properties and you set a fee for the type of property, and I think there was perhaps a split within classification of, particularly commercial, a smallish number that would perhaps be related to the downtown properties, and then larger ones that were commercial. It's basically, there's no operational cost other than getting your properties lined up and submitted to the county so they can be included in the tax statements. Interestingly enough, you do receive money throughout the course of the year, but of course the vast majority of the money would come twice a year when the 2 property tax statements are mailed out. You avoid any fee with the county to manage the money. It comes to us in the regular course of business. The placing the stormwater fee on the water bills, if you will, co-billing with waterworks, that's attractive because you're already in a billing environment. But you're chasing around a whole lot of other issues with that, in that they have a lot of turnover of properties, so their non-payment or vacancy rate is as high as, what, 5%? And just being vacant and not being billed in any particular month, whereas the county's delinquency rate generally is about 2%. You have the burden of payment. If it's on the property tax statement, it's going to be basically mailed to property owners. They will pay that. If it's rental property, or that eventually payment of that fee works its way down to the rent, but the burden of payment falls on the property owner. If it is a waterworks billing, the burden of payment is on the account holder that has the bill. We've had a couple of meetings with Waterworks. I think they can probably bill this. As we've talked about, there's a fairly substantial upfront programming charge that they've identified, and then the cost sharing structure for monthly billings is, if there's a certain amount of money that they invest or they spend for the year to do all the bill collection and billing and all that sort of thing, that's divided proportionally into the amount of money received. It's billed back to a percentage of funds generated from the refuse collection, the sewer collection, and then you throw stormwater in there. So you have, in essence, you shift collection costs from essentially waterworks back onto the city. That's a few $1,000s a month. I think, is that what you figured, Mike?
Right now, we're currently paying $23,000 and some change a month for the billing.
And that would go to probably 28,
That would go
20.
to about $28,000 a month.
So that's a $60,000 off the top, if you will, that
Annual.
annually. It has, I think the thing that's most attractive about going with Waterworks is it's a bill that people are used to seeing. It's a bill that's got a collection method. Waterworks has said they will not shut off somebody's water if they refuse to pay their stormwater fee. That's not unusual for their approach to life. Those are kind of the summaries. They both have strong points and they both have weak points.
There's a similar line item on your property tax bill. Everybody pays a landfill fee, and so this would be similar to that, where there'd be a line item would just essentially be a stormwater fee.
I know this is a fee and not a tax, and you do state here, tax exempt properties, churches, et cetera, will pay this fee you put on the tax statement. So these tax exempt properties, are they getting an annual bill of some kind from the
County for
from the county? Will this be the first one, or does everyone get a landfill?
They
It has
get
a
that
fee,
solid
not a
waste.
tax.
They get a solid waste fee. I don't know
Okay,
if it
so
comes
they-
as a bill or how it.
Yeah, it's not going to, because
So this
They'd
would
never-
just be
they'd
an
never
additional,
received a
something they'll
bill.
be getting, it'll be
yes,
awesome.
they'd never received any tax bill, they wouldn't see it, and they just think they didn't do it, and we'd have an education process. But this is not a tax, it's a fee, so no one's exempt from it.
That's correct.
Well, I think it makes sense financially, possibly, from a property tax standpoint. We're going to pay 60, 70, who knows how much.
60,000 annually
At
in
least, yeah, if they charge
additional,
whatever.
additional
So they take
to
some
put
of
it
it
on
off.
the water bill.
Yes.
And there's, if people don't pay, if they say, my water bill's $60 and that's $5 and they just send in that, how do we chase that $5? Obviously, we're not going to chase $5, not everybody, but you won't have the failure rate as much on property tax. You have 2 to 3% failure on property tax every year anyway. And but if you have people refuse to pay on the water department, there's no way of coming back at it, probably, I'm guessing. But I'd go with staff's recommendation here.
After seeing this, an extra cost it's going to incur for the billing on the water bill, and the fact that other buildings that are not taxable would also be able to get the fee, I would have to go along with that as well, with staff recommendation.
I don't know, yeah, I grappled with this and I always thought that the water one would be the easier one to do on there, but it's the setup fee and then the monthly collection fee on that. I think that's what's really swaying me to go towards the the property tax too.
I'd support the property tax.
Okay.
We have to collect it one way or another. It's, at the end of the
Right.
day, your checkbook's gonna balance the same way, whether you pay it on the water bill or you pay it on your tax bill. Correct? And the property owner's checkbook will balance the same way.
So with that, we will bring back to the commission some funding options with
Thank you. That
setting
would be
some,
good.
setting some amounts and how that would look on your statement and some more data about collection of funds.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Next item on the agenda, review Chapter 78, peddlers, solicitors, and transient merchants.
Carmen Henderson?
Yeah, at the October 17th study session, staff reviewed this chapter of the Code of Ordinance with some requested or suggested changes. In the peddler and solicitor section, we reviewed some ordinances of other cities and kind of best practices, and some of the things that staff would recommend would just to better define peddlers and solicitors and any other relevant definitions in that section, because in our code there's some lacking of definitions. So as you're reading through that, it's really best to have a real definition of the items that you're looking at. Also to add a requirement for peddlers and solicitors to provide a photograph, which would be added to their license and require them that they display that and carry it with them. Our thought was to have some lanyards, which we've done some experimenting with, getting some different lanyards and laminating those and see if those would work and if a picture would fit on those, and I think that would work really well. Require the applicant to submit at least 2 business days prior to soliciting to give staff sufficient time to process the application. Again, as I talked about in the previous meeting, sometimes we get 10 or 15 alarm, that are alarm businesses, and they come in, and it just takes a lot of staff time. And that's one of the things quite a few cities do, is they require the application 48 hours is kind of the norm to process those applications, really look at them, there's questions on there about background and things like that, and really give us a chance to look at them.
I would recommend 2 business days rather than 48 hours.
Yeah, I've got in here
Yeah,
2
yeah.
business days, yeah. And then just do an update of kind of the application requirements. And then the chapter currently doesn't state anything that would happen if they violate this section of the ordinance. So staff would recommend adding something to that. I would get with the city attorney and see what would be appropriate to add to that.
I think that would be
come
good.
back,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
As an ordinance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there should be a penalty if we're going to violate the ordinance.
But on that, let's say there is a penalty, say, we take them to court and fine $150. The reality is, these are usually transient people that, if they are in violation, they're in Iowa next week, you're not gonna find them. But you go with to put a court, say that they could be fined, so it's a judicial process. Why can't we just do an administrative process? They violate, the company then is out of business in town for a year or something like that. That would give you the authority to do that, then rather than have to go through the judicial process, which, how are you gonna serve a warrant on somebody that's knocking on doors in Dubuque, Iowa?
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just.
And one of the penalties could be if they're caught soliciting and they come in, maybe the fee is then doubled. That's a possibility. I don't.
Or I think
there's
at
some-
least 90% of the population that are banned from soliciting.
I
If
do
you don't have
too.
anybody knocking on your door, I think people would be very
I
happy.
do too.
And I will tell you that in the surrounding communities, we communicate with the other clerk's offices. When we have solicitors in the area, we let them know that they're in our area. They let them know that we're, that they're in their area. And so we communicate, and so we're kind of on the lookout for, because they move from city
Sure
to
they do.
city. So, that's something we could also, hey, they were in our city, they didn't get the proper documentation, watch them if they come in here, just
Yeah.
different
Well,
things like
I
that. Which wouldn't necessarily be in the ordinance, but I just let you know we do communicate with other cities in the area.
I think being banned from the city is more, would carry more clout than another charge, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, so we can have
monetary
some
charge.
possible, what the violations are, what the penalties are, so we can certainly put that in as an option. And then the last thing is, at the October 17th meeting, there was a discussion about the transient merchant section of the ordinance. At a previous meeting, there was a consensus just to bring this back, just to look at if the commission wanted to make any changes to it, or if they just wanted to leave it as it currently is. And just to remind the commission, this is the one that requires that if it's on any city property to include the community center, they have to come in for approval by the city commission, and they're restricted to just one event every 6 months. So if you want to leave that the way it is, that's fine. It's in the same section. If you want to look at any changes, we can certainly take a look at it. Otherwise, just.
I don't think we've had any
whatever the commission
problem with it other than occasionally, but that's been in place quite a few years.
It has.
So
Yeah.
if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, initially I
That
brought
was a
it up.
communication issue really
Right.
that caused that problem, so.
And I just did some research, and someone had suggested that a lot of people up on posts, they'll start a business, but actually then with further investigation, most of them really stay confined to the post, so really it's a wash, so until you get some burning desire, just leave it as it is.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Colonel, I got one other question on your transient merchants. And we talked about it very, very briefly when this first came up. Your tool trucks,
What trucks, I'm sorry?
your Matco, Mac, and Snap-on
Oh,
tool
okay,
trucks.
tool trucks, okay.
They're transient merchants, but seems to me in the definition that if you're invited, like a solicitor, if you're invited into the home, you don't need the license. If you just go knock on the doors, you do. Every one of these trucks have a place or designated time within a small time span to be at a dealership or at a local garage. So, yes, they are invited to these dealers.
I can tell you, we haven't licensed any
Right.
businesses like you're describing. And I would say currently the way the code is written, it doesn't address if they're invited or not. And I think we've kind of just interpreted it
Right.
that if they're invited to a business.
Right.
It's the same as kind of somebody was going to sell anything to a retail
Right,
shop
yeah.
as a wholesaler.
Yeah, I interpret soliciting as knocking cold on your door.
Right.
Yeah, there's all the industries here in town, the garages, Great Western, everybody, they have, and Fastenals or Snap-on or whoever it might be, Hallmark has, a shoe truck that comes in once or twice a year.
Yeah.
But they're by invitation. I don't consider that to be a solicitor, that they can be knocking on my door trying to sell me who knows what.
Yeah, I would agree, and that's not the way we'd interpret it either.
On, it says once every 6 months, or what is the exact wording?
No more than 36.
Once, let's say somebody comes in April 15th, and they want to do another one October 14th. In theory, that's, because October 14th happens to be a Saturday, and April 15th is a Saturday, I'm just grabbing dates. To make it easier on yourself, why not no more than 2 per calendar year or something like that? Just, so if they want to do one in July and one in September, so be it. Or, I don't know.
That would be up to
Look for
the
your
commission if
input on that.
That would be up to the commission if they wanted to change that wording, because that
Would it make it simpler for you, or do you see problems with it?
I might ask Tammy if that would help with the booking for the community center. From our standpoint, from the clerk's office, however it's written, really, as far as issuing a license, it doesn't matter, but.
If it's not an
But
issue to
Tammy
you,
might, yeah.
the way it is, I leave it as it is. The other one makes it easier.
Yeah.
You
Go
go
back to
thing
the
I
date
can-
of the
It makes
first
sense.
license
Yeah,
and
the only-
just say 6 months.
The only thing I can think of is maybe something that is more relevant to the summer months, where they might want to have two
Yeah,
within,
You know, I mean,
Within
this time of
less
year,
than
you
six,
actually
yeah.
have one, have two.
so,
Well, when we had the children's consignment sales, they would
Tammy,
do-
can you go to?
Yeah.
the-
Yeah, come up here.
When we'd have the children's consignment sales, they would often do one in the spring, like maybe April, and another in September. I'm not sure that there's,
And I think
I
it's
think that,
fall.
you know, 2 per calendar year might work better for,
I'd take recommendations. Yeah, I'm just, if,
Yeah, if you think that
I
would work,
think
we
that
can do
might work a little bit better and gives a little bit more flexibility
have to
for, you know,
Look at those.
those types of
dates,
things. So
yeah.
we could change that to 2 per calendar year if the commission be.
That'll work for you.
I think it would help the vendors some.
Great,
so.
thank you.
Okay. We'll make that change.
Thank you, Mark. Sounds good.
Okay.
Anything else on transient merchants? Carla, anything else? Any other questions?
Okay. So we'll just bring this back at a future meeting for ordinance consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. A review of annual permit license fees, Appendix F.
This is the annual review of the schedule of fees, Appendix F of the Code of Ordinance. Staff doesn't really have any suggestions or recommendations on anything. The only thing would be that earlier in the year, we made some changes to Chapter 54, Health and Safety with the food vendors. And at that time, the temporary food service permit was set at $10. The inspection of a temporary food service that did not have a state license would be an additional $25 for our local health and safety officer to do a little bit more a thorough inspection. And then just add the ice cream vendor for $60. We've always charged $60 for an ice cream vendor. It was just classified as a mobile food vendor, so we just split those out. So we would add those 3 fees to the schedule. And then there was just one other recommendation. If you look at the first page of the schedule of fees, it is in regards to the rental registration. When the rental registration went into effect in 2009, there was a $40 late fee if a person didn't register by October 1st. That still shows on that schedule of fees as a $40 registration fee if not registered by October 1st. It's October 1st, 2009, so it's a little misleading. There is no late fee. There are some fees if people haven't registered that we can assess, but I would suggest just removing that because it really isn't applicable any longer. And then just with the discussion on the transient emergent, then I would just make that change to every 2 times per calendar year, which isn't in here now, but just based on that conversation, we'll make that change too. And then if there was any other fees that the commission has any questions on, you can take recommendations for that and add that to any changes if you would like. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any other suggestions.
Reviewed through this, they all look reasonable to me, so. I didn't study every way that close.
don't cross out the ice cream man. I have to have an-
Yeah, that's what he's always been charged, so.
You know, summer has arrived.
Okay. Anything else on that, reviewing the fees?
No, yeah.
Okay, last item on the agenda is the 2018 state legislative issues.
Madam Mayor and Commission, the Kansas Legislature begins the 2018 session on January 8th. Prior to the session each year, the League of Kansas Municipalities releases its Statement of Municipal Policy, which provides an overview of topics that affect the cities in 2018. That list is usually about 100 items. We have narrowed that down to 23. Not that the other amount don't affect us, but these are the ones that we'll focus on. I want to bring up that during the session, we will monitor all bills that affect the city that move through the House and Senate. We'll bring those bills that have positive or negative impacts to the city to the Commission for support or opposition. And for those Commission's goals, we will make every effort to bring requests to Commission meetings as time allows for formal approval. City has taken the league's policy statement and identified, as I mentioned, 23 issues we feel are particularly relevant to the city. Again, does not mean that the other issues are not important and will not become priority items during the session. The session is a living, breathing time, and things pop up as we move forward. So all the items that we have for our city-specific legislative agenda are things you've seen in the past. They emphasize, I place them in 4 categories: home rule and local control. Continue to reject any sort of erosion of home rule controlled by the state, whether that be city elections, annexation, our ability to regulate our signs, our public rights of way. We believe those decisions should be left to the local level. We really want to highlight infrastructure. The CLINK program, which is now called the City Connecting Link Improvement Program, that is a cost share program for maintenance of state highways with inside city limits, of which we have a number, and those have been good sources of funding for us. We are in favor of bringing back T-Works, maybe a couple years away, but in continued support of KDOT to work with cities on cooperative programs, improving revolving loan funds and other economic development type projects. Looking at financial matters, tax lid modification, we support the home rule repeal of the tax lid and let that decision be made by the local officials. But if not, we support the continued modification of exemptions. We support the ability of cities to offer tax credits and abatements and increment financing as the local elected officials see fit. There's been some talk about eliminating some of that authority from city leaders. Asset forfeiture was something that was looked at last session when the state was attempting to patch budget holes about sweeping local government's asset forfeiture. So we continue again to support it to be left the way it is. Summary publication of resolutions, again, one we've had before, allowing cities to publish a summary resolution with the full text online. And then finally, under the category of municipal utilities and personnel, we do have a municipal utility, and we support the powers to be able to continue to do that. Full funding of KPERS and KP&F retirement systems. And again, we support the ability of the local governments to set policies regarding the carrying of weapons and firearms by municipal employees while they're engaged in their work. Those are just the highlights from R23, and I will send out the link to the state's entire 100 or so items. It's been a quiet run up to the session for local government. To be honest with you, we've reached out to our local elected officials. I think that a lot of the time spent on budget items, school funding, not quite the assault on local government we've seen over the last couple years, but things come up over the years, so we'll continue to monitor it. These priorities will be sent to our state legislators in advance of our December 1st luncheon with them, where we'll just sort of solidify our positions, and then I'll keep you updated as the session moves forward.
Right. Well, again, it's, so many of these things are the mandates that, we're defending our home rule here. We were elected by our local citizens here, and we should be able to govern our own community without interference from the state, and that's just my comment on that. So I appreciate this. This is a good document, and I support it wholeheartedly. Any other comments on that?
No, we just agree with you. I do anyway.
Thank you.
Well, yeah.
All right, any other business tonight or anything to discuss? No. Okay. If not, we don't need a motion. We are adjourned.
Wish everybody happy Thanksgiving. I thought you
I did last week.
Oh, I know, but it's this week.
It is this week. I was sure I was going to hear this week. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Thank you.